I've been getting a lot more requests about riding uphills. So in this video, I want to share with you the top 5 mistakes that I made when I started riding out in the Rocky Mountains, because there's a lot of hills up there and they're very steep and it's very intimidating when you get stuck and it feels like you're going to slide back down the hill. And when that happens, you can fall over, the bike can come after you, and bad things can happen. So without further ado, the first mistake that I made was looking down just past my fender. This is a rookie mistake, but it's easy to do because you're focused on what you're about to ride over. But when you're just looking down 5, 10, 15 feet in front of you, you can't see the uphill that's coming 50 feet ahead, which means that you can't build any extra speed or momentum to get up that hill. And once you start riding up, it's a lot harder to build momentum, especially if there's rocks or the dirt is really slippery. Mistake number 2 is just sitting the whole time while you're riding up the hill. Maybe you don't feel comfortable standing, or you feel like the throttle is really jerky when you stand up. But when you sit and you're going uphill, you're a lot more likely to wheelie because your weight is a little bit too far back. And once the hill starts to get really steep, you got too much weight backwards and the bike wants to wheelie out from under you. And once you feel the front wheel starting to go up, you want to shut off the throttle. But when you do that, what's going to happen? Yeah, you're going to lose your momentum and you're going to get stuck on the hill. And another problem is that when you're sitting down the whole time, you might be able to get away with sitting if the hill is really smooth and not super steep. But once you ride a hill with rocks or roots or bumps of any kind, when you're sitting down, you're going to get bucked off the seat, even if you have the best suspension in the world. And when you get bounced around on the seat, this loads and unloads the suspension, so the tires are basically hopping up and down. And even if they stay on the ground, they're not going to get as much traction, because when the suspension is going up and down, the knobs are less likely to dig in and get as much traction as possible. And when you're getting bounced off of the seat, it's a lot harder to hang on. You're going to have to death grip the bars, and it's a lot easier to whiskey throttle and loop out.
Riding uphills is such a challenge that I recently made a Uphills Made Easy troubleshooting workbook so that you can identify and solve your specific problem when going up steep or technical hills. It's on sale now. You can check that out in the description below.
Mistake number 3 is poor throttle control. This is when you're going up a steep hill and you just hold the throttle wide open because you think you need as much power as possible. This is why so many trail riders think they need a 302 stroke right from the beginning, and then they just roost everyone behind them and wheelie or get stuck halfway and fall back down. And then they wonder why the guy with the old XR200 just putt-putts right up the hill. Because when you're just holding the throttle wide open, trying to put as much power to the ground, if you actually looked at your rear tire, you'd notice that you're probably spinning it. Because if you're using more than 25 horsepower, it's really hard to get all of that power to the ground. And as soon as you start spinning, you start losing momentum, and it's extremely hard to build that momentum back up. So you either stall out halfway up the hill, or you get up near the top, and then you have to throw your bike to make it up to the top. Mistake number 4 is when you're paddling with both of your feet. So you got your feet off and you don't feel like you have good balance. You feel like you're going to tip over maybe, or you're trying to push and paddle to try and get up that hill. I found that there's 2 problems with this. One is when you're trying to push with both of your feet on the ground, this is taking weight off of the bike, off of the tire, meaning that it's a lot more likely to spin. And once it starts spinning, you're not going anywhere. And even if you aren't touching the ground with your feet, you still got all your weight on the bike, you are going to start bouncing up and down, which we talked about previously. And once you start bouncing around, this unloads the rear tire and you're a lot more likely to spin. And mistake number 5, you might have heard this advice before from those macho riders, is just get over the rear and gas it. They say this because, oh, you need to put the most power to the ground, and if your wheels start spinning, you just need to get more weight back. But if you already don't have control of the bike, then why would getting over the rear and giving it a handful of throttle make you have more control? Yeah, it might work, but for how long? I see a lot of riders, and it's usually the guys, say that if you aren't crashing, you ain't trying. But in my mind, that's a terrible mindset, because even though yes, I'm going to crash eventually, but if I'm going in with that mindset and just being reckless and just giving it a handful of throttle and hoping for the best, that's just stupid because you're basically giving the bike full control of you. You're just hanging on and hoping you can ride it right out. I want to reduce your risk of riding so that you don't crash. I don't want you to get hurt. I want you to enjoy trail riding. And you can't do that if you're hurt. Woo, it's getting windy here. If you made any one of these 5 mistakes, then you are a nervous trail rider. But that's okay because we've all been there. I was intimidated when I went out to the mountains because of the steep hills and the big rocks, but after I built up my confidence, I was able to enjoy it a lot more. And if you want to build your confidence without taking years to do, you should check out this video here. I'm Kelly Fagan from MX Hideout. Ride safe, have fun.